The sneaky bastards in the shadows that I have had some very colourful things to say about over the years. The rogues. It is time to discuss my former class that I have not looked back at the whole time through Classic, but obviously there's a lot of you that play this class with a lot of love, and we've got a lot of questions for our guests today about these sneaky boys hopefully rising up through Wrath of the Lich King Classic and restoring some maybe former glory. Maybe that's a bit harsh in saying that, but we'll get through all that in the conversation. Let's welcome our guest for now, everyone. I'm so happy to have him help me out and put his hand up at the last second, a return caller after being on the show just last week. Subtle, mate, how are you?
Hey Josh, doing great. Really excited to talk some Wrath Rogue with you. It's one of my favorite versions of Rogue in all of WoW. Super fun time.
Mate, I'm so glad to have you here. And obviously, people know you as the Prot Paladin guy. And, granted, so many of us tinker with different classes through this game. But, I mean, just to set you up a little bit, is it the case that whilst you're focused on Prot Paladin now, you played Rogue back in the day and you mained it a shitload and you're going off of old memory there?
Yeah, so I played Rogue since week one of Vanilla, and I played it up through, well, really till the most recent retail expansion, but I haven't played the recent expansions very much. I really stopped playing as much in like MOP, but I played a lot of Wrath, got a lot of Glad titles, got a lot of high parses, and yeah, Rogue was my longtime main. Prop Pally is kind of a new thing for me.
Too easy. Out of interest, do you kind of like, even though you've got your content going with Paladins at the moment, do you keep tabs on what's going on with rogues? Like, do you read, Reddit threads and online stuff, or watch videos on YouTube about rogues to this day?
Yeah, I still watch a little bit, not as much as I used to, because following one class 100% takes a lot of time. So right now that's kind of prop alley for me, but I do try to kind of stay in the loop on Rogue. Like Simonize, he has great videos about Rogue stuff. I try to check those out once in a while.
Yeah, it's completely my fault. I jumped on the Discord this morning and said, guys, are there any rogues out there who want to join Mike and I? And obviously you put your hand up, Subtle, and a lot of people, were mentioning, Josh, get Simonize. I only discovered Simonize literally about a week ago. And I reached out to him via Discord, but it's so last minute. Like, he didn't get back to me in time, and I completely understand. Like, I was like, fuck, I'm going live in half an hour. Simonize, is there a chance I could get you on the show? So I don't sort of criticize him in any way for not getting back to me, but it would have been great to have him. I had no idea that this guy was like revered as the voice on Rogue. So maybe, look, another day, who knows? But look, until then, let's get back to Countdown's version of Simonize, our regular, mouthy New Yorker. You all know him, you all love him. Bawlsosteel. Mike, what's going on? How are you, mate?
Hey, Josh, I'm great. I'm glad to be here. I'm really happy to talk about Rogue. This is probably in my opinion, the best iteration of Rogue in WoW. Like full stop. The way in which they buffed rogues for Wrath is it's incredible.
That's great to hear, and we'll get all into it right now, guys. Look, strap in for the next 90 minutes or so. Here we go. Look, I'm going to start you guys off with the same question that I started Subtle and Tier off last week with Paladins, and just some very broad strokes. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. Obviously, I've got some questions lined up for you on the specifics, but let's get warm and fuzzy, guys. Mike, I'll start with you, and I'll get Subtle to piggyback off of your answer. What is it about rogues that makes them fun for you in Wrath? Why does it make you feel good to drive a rogue?
For me, I really like basically just the amount of the extra tools that rogues get in Wrath. I also just like the quick like APM gameplay for me. As being a younger person, it keeps my attention more than just just waiting for cast bars to finish with the fact that rogues have only a 1 second GCD. I also just like being in melee. I've always preferred playing melee classes, so those are just the main things off the top of my head of why I like playing Rogue and Wrath so much, and also because Rogues are actually the melee class that the way they buff poisons by a lot in Wrath, you don't have to worry about, the Rogues still scale really well in Wrath, but we still start off really strong Wrath because of the way they buffed poisons in Wrath.
All right, we'll get into it. Subtle, same question, maybe different answer. Tell me why a rogue is fun in Wrath.
So, kind of for the same reason it's always fun. Like with stealth, that just opens up like so many possibilities on things you can do. Like in BGs, I think rogue's like probably the single most impactful class. You can do so many things with stealth, like when you get creative with it. And in Wrath, a lot of just like kind of quality of life things get changed. So like energy is no longer in like ticks of 20. You just get like, it's like 0.1 energy or 1 energy every 0.1 seconds. So you're constantly getting energy back, which is really nice. You don't have to play in those like 2-second chunks anymore. And they take kick off the GCD, which is super fun. It makes interrupting an absolute breeze in conjunction with the energy change. So you don't have to, pool energy for like 2 seconds to make sure you have that kick. Like you can, use abilities and you're going to get enough energy back in like 0.5 seconds to be able to throw that kick. So it just is like way more fluid gameplay in Wrath, I think.
All right, beautiful. Hey, good news, guys. You'll never guess what. Guess who just got back to me? Simonize, and he is keen to join us. So if you guys are okay, can we get the man, the myth, the legend in here? I've just got to send him a link to the Discord. Bear with me, everyone on stream. Sorry, I think this will be worth taking a minute to do this. Mike's gonna freak out like he did when he was on the show with Mute.
Oh, I've never even this guy is so, just to give like the people listening.
Yeah, set him up for the listeners because I don't know too much about him.
This guy, the level of like knowledge and depth that he goes into with every aspect of the class, with every single ability. This is the guy that crunches the numbers. He does all the research for every single patch of every part of every expansion, figuring out exactly all the damage coefficients, what like the ratings with everything. He's the guy that like proves why like rogues are good through all the numbers and has like done the research to back it up. He's incredibly informative with his videos. And he has like this really weird charm with his videos that he always wears a different hat in every single one of his videos that I just like randomly appreciate. But he's got just an insane depth of knowledge, and like most of my knowledge at this point about the class has come from him.
Beautiful. Subtle, you're aware of Simonize's work?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike pretty much covered it all. Yeah, this dude's amazing. Yeah, what this guy says is gospel basically for Rogue.
Oh, here he is. He can hear us now. Simon, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, mate. Look, thank you so much for at the very last minute taking up this invitation. I cannot thank you enough. We've been gushing over you over the last 5 minutes since you got back to me with that message. I was just lamenting to the guys. I was like, oh, this is my mistake. I've been so busy this week. I've left it to the last minute. Everyone, was like, Josh, get Simonize if you're talking rogues. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll rush at the last second. And I really thought, you might be busy and acceptably busy, I only messaged you half an hour beforehand. But here you are at the last second, and we couldn't be happier to have you, mate.
Well, I'm happy to be here. As I told you, I just hopped out of the shower and sat down to my computer, saw this message. I'm like, well, of course, I'll come on here to talk.
That's very, very kind of you, mate. Look, I said to the guys, Simon, I should repeat to you, I have to admit, I'm not going to lie to you. I only discovered your content last week, and I was just telling the story to the guys of me watching a couple of your videos for the first time and being very impressed with your handle on the game, and also getting acclimatized to your shtick with the hats and everything, which I think is fantastic. But mate, we're discussing, we literally, you've only missed the first 5 minutes. All I asked the guys was a little bit of fluff about, tell me why Wrath Rogue is fun to you. We're going to get into the really specific stuff very soon, so don't worry, you'll get your time to shine. But mate, if I can get you on the same question, tell me, maybe as compared to vanilla, as compared to TBC, why is the Wrath Rogue fun to you?
Well, in Wrath, you've got two town specializations they're good and viable in raiding. And for me, the more fun one is definitely combat. And what I like doing, which you could do in Burning Crusade 2, is stack up your cooldowns together, and the skillful use of your cooldowns, knowing when to pull the trigger on them to get the most value out of them. It was very fun. You pop off, you do so much damage when you're hitting 2 targets with Blade Flurry. And the change, going forward to Wrath, is that you get yet another damage dealing cooldown that you can stack up together with the Killing Spree talent at the end of the combat tree, which is very cool. Jumping around the battlefield, smashing everyone. Oh, it's great.
Excellent. Simon, sorry, I meant to mention, if you're okay with turning on a video, mate, you're more than welcome to. I am doing a video thing, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. It's all good, mate. As you said, you just got out of the shower. I don't want to bug you or pressure you into it at all if you don't want to.
No, that's all right. While you're talking, I'm sitting here trying to get it set up right now.
All good, mate. All good. Look, guys, I'll let Simon do his thing. I'll throw it to you other guys while he's getting ready. I wanted to have a little bit of a quick discussion before we get into the Wrath specifics about how you guys went through TBC. And Mike, you'll be able to speak a lot more on this one, obviously, than Subtle might be able to, because he played a Paladin through TBC. But I've mentioned many times on this show that I do feel very bad about the treatment that rogues got through TBC from the community at large. And I saw this on my server. It was on all the servers. A lot of information went out in the lead up to TBC from the content creators saying, rogues are trash, don't take a rogue, blah, 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 melee in TBC, how could you even consider it? Fuck off warriors and rogues, blah, blah, blah. And as we all, know, you can clear content with anything in this game. It's sweaty min-maxes that obviously really get very picky about who they're taking to heroics and raids and whatnot. My opening question, Mike, is I think it's so unfortunate that happened. How did that affect your life as a rogue through TBC? And we'll get to the Wrath aspect of this discussion very soon, but let me start you off there, Mike.
So I'm a bit of a odd one out for myself specifically, because I never had a problem getting, groups for heroics or being a part of a raid, because when I was in a raid, I was the raid leader. And whenever I was running heroics, I was just doing it with guildies. But I think, the main thing to speak with about why rogues feel like they got the short end of the stick is because in TBC, rogues just lacked that raid utility that so many other classes had. So it was just hard for the min-maxers to justify bringing more than one rogue to a raid, and not to mention the amount of encounters in TBC that are so melee unfriendly. The amount of fights that you just as a melee DPS, that you just this crazy downtime, especially in like SSC TK, it was unreal how melee unfriendly fights were in TBC.
Subtle, if I can throw it to you on that topic, and guys, be as honest and forthright as you want to be. You know how it is on this show, but Subtle, on that point, at the end of the day, did it fucking matter? We're all so good at the game now. Did the melee thing... Yes, okay, there's always going to be the sweaty min-max top tier stuff, but hey, Simon, we've got you there now. Thanks, mate. Did it matter at the end of the day if you were a melee, and specifically a rogue, throughout TBC's lifetime?
It definitely mattered a little bit in like tier 5, I think. Like, if you had a lot of melee, like pre-nerf Vaj and Gale might have been a little harder. More specifically Vaj, but... yeah, now that we're later into the expansion, like tier 6, like you could just clear that with anything. Like my guild cleared most of it week 1 with like 20 people, because it was like off days for us. Like we normally raid Tuesday, Wednesday, release on Thursday. So for like tier 6, it didn't matter. And now in Sunwell, like rogues are doing crazy DPS. So I mean, really just tier 5, I think, was kind of the main one.
Excellent. Simon, I'll throw you the same question, mate. I love the hat. Thank you for donning that one for the show. Look, it got to an extent where I understand a bit more for raids. Yes, I do. You guys are very top tier players. You want to push, squeeze the most juice out of the raid. I get that. The trickle down effect, I think, that pissed people off was the average player absorbing all this information through osmosis from the content creators and the general vibe from the community, and not wanting rogues for heroic dungeons and clearing simple content and being like, no, fuck off. I'd rather wait 25 minutes for a mage or a warlock than take you, Mr. Rogue. How would you explain the situation and how did it make you feel? Oh, you're muted, mate. Simon, you're muted. If you can hear me.
Good now?
Yeah, good now.
All right. Yeah, so I'd say there's definitely a trickle-down effect, like you say. You know, content creators say, oh, rogues are bad, and that goes into the community, and everyone, you know, rejects rogues from groups. It makes the life of a rogue trying to find dungeon groups very difficult. I'll touch on two things, at the highest level and at the more casual level. At the highest level, rogues lack some of the utility that other classes have, and that's mainly, I think, in area of effect damage, like ability to deal multi-target damage. And you can most directly compare the rogue to the warrior. You know, the warrior has cleave, has whirlwind, has sweeping strikes that are all excellent. And the rogue, you know, gets blade flurry, 2-minute cooldown, 15-second duration. Very powerful while it's active, but when you're going from pack to pack to pack, you know, very quickly, you don't get a lot of uptime with this blade flurry effect, whereas the warriors are just cranking out the sweeping strikes, cranking out the cleaves, the whirlwinds, that they're much more able to deal that multi-target damage. And I think that's the biggest weakness rogues had that held them back at the highest level. And then on the more casual side of it, people don't really recognize, you know, when they're not at that really high level, and that these like really high level metas don't really apply to them. You know, there's plenty of times where, like, I go into a raid and, you know, I top the meters on bosses, right? And I beat the hunters, I beat the warlocks, I beat the whatevers, because I'm like a top 1% player. I mean, let's just be real. Like, a very good player of a less good class can outperform a medium or slightly above average player of a, you know, more meta class.
Absolutely. Well, look, to keep the ball rolling, Simon, I'll keep you going and then we'll go back down the list to the other guys. Tell me why Wrath is going to be, hopefully for you guys, different. Is this, because I'm trying to be a big champion this time around of positivity, of like, take whatever fucking class you want. You know, it's kind of take the player, not the class, but like, Wrath content, you're going to clear it regardless of who you have. Stop hating on classes and just fucking take people and play the game and have fun. I'm sick of seeing videos go up on YouTube of like, this class is trash because of X, Y, and Z in Wrath. Like, I'm fucking over it. So tell me why in Wrath, for the rogues, they should have reason to be more positive about maybe shaking off this stigma.
Yeah, so I think, you know, Blizzard recognized, you know, back in the day, Blizzard recognized that Rogue was kind of weak in Burning Crusade. Rogue has received a lot of buffs going into Wrath of the Lich King. And that big weakness I talked about of not having good area of effect damage is absolved. We get Fan of Knives, which is an excellent, very powerful area of effect damage ability. So we're no longer going to lack in that, you know, area of effect capability, even at the highest levels of play. We have a just considerable amount of buffs that just plain increase the damage output. And one of the biggest ones is the rogue poisons, which were not even used in Burning Crusade mostly. Now scale with your attack power, which makes them just absurdly powerful. And rogues will be dealing, you know, 30 to 40% of their overall damage will be poison damage. I mean, like, rogues should not have any trouble finding groups at any level of play because they're just very powerful.
Very good. Mike, I'm going to throw it to you, and we'll keep the ball rolling on this topic on the upside of Wrath. If I can just sort of set you up with a softball, you know, I'll lob one over the plate for you to knock out of the park. Now, an idiot like me, the layman, Mike, says, look, it's great what Simon is saying. I've definitely heard this, that the PvE utility and damage and buffs and everything for rogues is fantastic. You guys definitely become a little bit more godly in PvE. Now, the TBC PvP rogue is described as the godliest version of that, specific niche for, utility of the class, in terms of if you want a PvP and you want to play rogue, TBC is the expansion for you. Now, coming into Wrath, if I were to say to you, well, do rogues kind of get, for lack of a better word, nerfed in PvP in Wrath? Do you think that's the wrong way to say it, or I'm somewhat on the right track?
I actually have to admit more of my weakness here. I actually didn't PvP very much with a rogue in Wrath, specifically in
That's
Arena.
okay. That's okay.
So
we can open it up to the floor. Subtle, Simon.
What was
I said we can open up to the floor if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, Rogue's still amazing in PvP and Wrath. There's a reason Wreckful was the first 3K rated player in Wrath. It's an amazing class. Like, if somebody good's playing a rogue, they're gonna be easy glad for sure.
Oh yeah, I don't mean to intimate that they're bad, but they were so good in TBC. Is it a weird half step back or not at all?
I mean, it's hard to say because they're still extremely good. They're still one of the best PvP classes. You get Shadowdance, you get Honor Among Thieves, you get all sorts of stuff. And Tricks of the Trade is actually incredible for PvP too. You put that on the other DPS on your team for your burst windows. And yeah, I mean, to me, Rogue and Wrath is just as OP in PvP as it is in TBC.
You're being too kind, Subtle. You can call me a fucking idiot. It's fine, mate. Simon, let me throw it over to you to finish this one. Rogues in PvP, a step forward or a step back?
I'm gonna have to be like Mike and say, PvP is not my forte.
That's okay.
I try to learn about it, so I know something. And my impression is that, as you're saying, rogues are very much gods in TBC PvP, and my impression, not my experience, is that they're probably dialed back just a little bit in terms of their relative power level to other classes in Wrath.
No, that's fair. Totally fair. Guys, we'll get through a bit more of the Wrath content then, and understanding that you guys have the experience that you have, we'll lean more PvE. That's fine. We can always save. If anyone listening, says, Josh, oh my God, I'll come in and be your PvP expert one day. Well, we'll do that another time. That's totally fine. But guys, let me just ask you more generally about the phases of Wrath before we get into the talent trees and everything. Is there a particular roller coaster ride for the rogue through the different phased content in Wrath of the Lich King, as seems to generally be the case for a lot of classes? I'll throw a question your way, and Mike, I'll get you to kick us off with this one. And I found the following quote on the subreddit, as I usually do, and I'll quote this user Dragunav, who said this, Mike. Rogues are good from the start with Assassination spec. Still good at the end, but if I remember correctly, combat takes over and is there in the top 3 to 5 if you know how to play. So, Mike, my question is, not only switching between specs, but also generally through the content, what's your ride like through the different phases in Wrath?
So my ride, generally, and even back in the day on retail and on a lot of private servers, for tier 7, I would mostly be Assassination, because just the way they buff poisons in Wrath is just absolutely incredible, and it doesn't scale with your gear as much. A big thing is they made poisons scale with your attack power in Wrath, which was really good. But just the power of Assassination isn't so dependent upon your gear because of how they buff poisons. Poisons go from single percentage of your damage from what it was in TBC or Vanilla to almost half your damage as an Assassination rogue. It's absolutely absurd how good poisons become in Wrath of the Lich King. That you could. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, all I was going to say is, so what is it that changes that has the push towards combat towards the latter half of the expansion?
So yeah, as we go along, there's more armor penetration on a lot of gear in later tiers of the raids. So you have things like the Mjolnir Runestone from 10-man hard mode Thorm. You pick up Grim Toll from 25-man Naxxramas. There's just and you just try to get honestly, you just try to stack to armor cap, either passively or through trinkets. I don't think you're gonna get to passively by like Ulduar, but like tier 10, tier 9, tier 10. Combat just scales incredibly with armor penetration compared to Assassination, because so much of Assassination's damage is through poisons that you just with your armor penetration taking off. I think it's actually I remember watching Simonize's video about armor penetration, taking off about 70% of a boss's armor, plus just how poison scale with your attack power. That in combat just does incredible damage with the crazy burst windows with your cooldowns, plus just dropping the boss's armor to around like 3,000 of I think it's like 10,200 ish of what every boss has the same amount of armor now. So it's from what I know, my knowledge is that armor penetration is like the one big stat of what makes combat better throughout Wrath of Lich King.
Very good. Simonize, I'll throw it over to you now that you've been mentioned and your content. I was watching that exact same video, as I'm sure many people have seen. That's how I found you last week, mate, watching this incredible breakdown of Armor Pen. And please, by all means, I'll do a half shout out for you for your YouTube channel. We'll give you a big opportunity at the end of the podcast to shout it out as well and give it a big plug. Where do people find you on YouTube again, man?
YouTube, Simonize Show is the name of the channel. I can get a URL 1 second.
All good. So I'll definitely put your URL in the show notes. Don't worry about that, man. But
sure thing.
Look, in that video, you explained it so well, and I'll get to sort of pick up where Mike left off. And I would frame the question this way. Is that relationship with Armor Pen and a rogue's understanding of how Armor Pen works in Wrath going to separate the good from the bad through this expansion?
I think, one of the things I covered in that video was a very common misconception that I found while I was researching for the video, which was, once you, this is the idea that's you can find all over the internet that says, once you get, Armor Pen cap, 100% armor ignore, that applying Sunder Armor doesn't do anything for you anymore. Applying Expose Armor, applying all these armor debuffs doesn't do anything for you anymore. And that's just, it's not correct. The Sunder Armor, the Fairy Fire, they always are increasing your damage output. So if you're not knowledgeable about that and you say, to hell with Sunder Armor, and you stop using it in your raids, your damage is going to suffer. And I think it's a very easy misconception to make, because like you read the stat and it says, your attacks ignore 100% of your target's armor. And I mean, any reasonable person would think that means, okay, the bosses are at 0 armor. We don't need debuffs anymore. So you do need that extra bit of knowledge to make sense of what's going on.
Very good, very good. Subtle, I'll get you to round us out, mate. Just on this, again, bringing it back to this core question of the roller coaster ride of the rogue through the expansion, mate. Did you personally notice back in the day, oh, here I am in Ulduar topping the meters. Oh, here I am later on in TOGC or whatever, sort of sitting at 5th or 6th. Oh, I'm back at number 1 in ICC. Like, is it quite the ride, or how would you explain it?
Well, I actually missed Ulduar. I had quit during that time, but I played a lot during TOGC and a ton during ICC. And TOGC, I was like gearing up again. So I slowly was working my way back up to number 1. And then in ICC, I was like number 1 every single fight, pretty much. Like rogues just go off in ICC. It's insane.
Very good. Guys, I'll open up this one, and we're finishing up on the general stuff, and we're going to get to the fun specifics of the talent trees. But, I want to hope that this isn't going to happen, but if I read this comment out to you and get first in best dressed, this is one of those random Reddit users where their username is AOSNFASGF345. They said the following. They said, look, rogues are S tier DPS the entire expansion, but people will be stacking the other S tier DPS such as warlocks and DKs in raids over rogues. So those raid spots will still be very tightly contested, even though you are a rogue and you are great. Who wants to talk about that first, Ian? Like, is it still tough for you to get a raid spot, or is it a bit easier to whisper into the ear of the GM?
I can start. I think this is a case, kind of like I said earlier, that a very good player of like a less good class can outperform a mediocre player of a better class. And I think the difference between the classes in Wrath compared to TBC, is lesser, right? Like there's not so much of that class difference. It's more of that skill difference. So the difficulty then becomes impressing upon the raid leader that you are actually a high performance player, that you know what you're doing, and that it's less about what class you're playing and more about, can you show good performance, or can you convince someone else that you can perform well, which is always a difficult, more of a social problem than a game problem even.
Very good. How about you other two guys? Anything else on that one?
I would say on that one that Wrath, the only, as someone who's played with a lot of private servers, the only specific raids or encounters that I know where guilds specifically went out of their way to stack certain classes was Zero Light Yogg, where the sweatiest top end guilds going for like server first would just stack the shit out of affliction locks. But to my knowledge, just the way class balance is, and the way encounters work in Wrath, there is no reason to be class stacking nearly as much as people did in Vanilla or TBC. Class balance is so much better, and every class and spec is so much stronger that I think you're just robbing yourself of raid utility, just trying to just stack a certain class over another.
Okay, Subtle, anything on this to finish us off?
They pretty much covered it, but yeah, it should be way easier to get a raid spot in Wrath as a rogue compared to now. And yeah, it's all about, I mean, this is where they started doing like the bring the player, not the class thing. And that's pretty much fleshed out by like the patch we're going to be playing. So yeah, like if somebody who's like a sick rogue, like you're not going to sit them or ask them to like re-roll a warlock or something. Like if you can find some sick rogues, bring them in for sure.
All right, very good. Guys, thank you so much for sending your questions in Twitch chat. I'm very, very bad with rogues, so I really appreciate that. I will need the help, so thank you so much, Ryan, for sending that stuff through. Thank you, Chingla. I will pose those questions to the guys. And guys, I might throw in one question now and some others later before we'll get to the talent trees right after this one question. Look, Simon, I'll throw it to you. Obviously, Nogs is kicking us off and said, question for Simon. Do you think guilds will be willing to invest that much time into gearing Assassination only for them to drop the gear in the bank for combat arm penetration?
I think there's not so much to worry about like dumping gear in the bank, because in each phase of Wrath of Lich King, you're going to be replacing almost every piece of your gear anyways. So, say come Trial of the Crusader, you want to make the switch to combat, or come Icecrown Citadel, you want to make the switch to combat. You're dumping all your old gear anyways. You're dumping all your Assassination gear from the previous phase anyways. So you're not really wasting anything. And outside of the weapons and a little bit of like how you gem the items, a lot of the items are similar between the two specs, right up till you get to the end. Trial of the Crusader, Icecrown Citadel, where there's going to be a couple pieces that are different from Assassination to combat. Because, again, that preference for the armor penetration, where the combat rogue wants to cap armor penetration, and the Assassination rogue is kind of like, whatever, I'll just pick whichever pieces have the most stats on them.
Very good, very good. Look, Mike, let me kick you off on the talent trees, and we'll start with Assassination, like we've already mentioned, very powerful at the start of the expansion. Mike, we've had him on the show many times over the years. Kevin Jordan, our friend, designer for many of these abilities and talent trees, along with the rest of the team. Hopefully we'll get Kevin on at some stage for an episode here to talk about a bunch of things in regards to Wrath. But Mike, if I were to ask you to play the role of Kevin's, manager or what have you, back in the Wrath, at the end of the Wrath expansion, let's say, and you sit him down in the office and it's time for his review, and you're staring at his work on the talent trees. Tell me what you'd be saying to Kevin on the positive side of things with the Assassination tree. What were the best new features that were brought in, and why, and what are you patting him on the back for?
So for me, just a standout that are specifically the new additions, the top three that come to my mind is would be focused attacks, which give all your melee criticals 100% chance to give you 2 energy. Overkill, which is when you come out of stealth for 20 seconds, you get 30% additional energy. Cut to the chase, which basically gives your combo point dump in Assassination, which is in Venom, 100% chance to refresh Slice and Dice. So there's less basically management with trying to keep up multiple buffs. You just put up Slice and Dice, and then and Venom is just keeping it up, and you're just basically you're using something that directly increases your damage while instead of just going through the tedium of just keeping up Slice and Dice. Let's see. Those and Hunger for Blood is like cool, but for like if just to do more damage, but it's kind of uninteresting because it's just a buff that you just keep up every minute that just generically increases your damage. But to me, cut to the chase and focus attacks are just like so much fun. Having critting in WoW is fun, and getting more energy to use your abilities more often for critting is just so much fun to me.
Okay, well, if I can just quickly keep you going, then we'll throw it to the other guys. Now I turn around and say, Kevin, you did great work on that, and again, Mike, putting you in this role. If we then turn to the negatives, what would you criticize Kevin for, if anything, in the Assassination tree in Wrath?
Like I said before, I think Hunger for Blood is incredibly boring and just feels very generic ability. While it is good, it's literally just a button you have to hit once every minute and just make sure you keep it up. There's really not much nuance to any of it. I think they changed some of the talents further down the tree that just generically increases your damage. Maybe they could have done some other stuff with that.
Okay.
I would say those are the main criticisms I have with Assassination. I think there's way more positives to it than negatives overall for me personally, because Assassination it goes from not very good to amazing in Wrath from just from those 3 talents I mentioned before. Huge amount to your DPS.
Simon, I see you nodding along furiously. I'll get you to bring us home, mate. In between that, I'll throw it to Subtle real quick and just say, Subtle, piggybacking off of what Mike just said, is there anything that we didn't go over that you personally love or dislike about the Assassination tree in Wrath?
The main thing that I didn't like was Hunger for Blood for sure. Back in actual Wrath, they changed it. It felt like every month they were changing it. They just viewed it as this sliding scale to buff or nerf rogue DPS depending on how they were performing. So I think it used to be 15% damage, and then they're rogues are doing a little too much damage, let's make that 12%, something like that. And they just kept dialing it back. So now this final version is the least interesting 41 point talent possible, or 51 point I guess at this point. you use it once a minute, it gives you 5% damage. That's like so uninteresting compared to like Killing Spree and Shadowdance, which are both amazing, and the other trees.
Yeah. Simon, I'll let you off the leash here, mate. You've been, as I said, nodding along furiously. Let me frame the question in a little bit of a harder fashion for you, mate. I'm sure you can take on this challenge. It's a very tough question, but I pose it occasionally on the show where the guys have just highlighted, look, this 51-point talent, it leaves a lot to be desired. What's going on with it? And we think through the history of some of the more underwhelming 31, 41, 51-point talents in the game. Where would you rank Hunger for Blood in the pantheon of disappointments? Is it the worst 51-point talent in Wrath?
Worst 51-point talent in Wrath. I don't know every single talent tree in Wrath for the other classes, but I can say it ranks among the worst, ultimate talents across classic TBC and Wrath for rogues. I mean, the real suckers are, surprise attacks in Burning Crusade. It's another just kind of passive little damage boost, very lame. And then you had Vigor as the ultimate assassination talent in Classic, which again just not very interesting. Although, it did allow it. That's probably the best of those three. But, Hunger for Blood's bottom two.
All right, all good. So, mate, I'll throw you the same question to finish this up. Anything that the guys might not have mentioned or that they said that you furiously agreed with? If you were reviewing Kevin Jordan, the grandfather of these talent trees, at the end of the expansion and saying either good job or bad job, what would you say about his work on the Assassination tree?
All right, I'll keep it quick. Hunger for Blood sucks. Uninteresting. I agree with everyone else here. Earlier versions of it had it like consuming a bleed effect on the rogue, so it would like remove a negative bleed effect from you, which gave it cool utility, but then it like wasn't usable in well, whatever. It was way more interesting before. This version, very lame. The combination of Cut to the Chase and Master Poisoner gives Assassination the most powerful finishing move of any of the specs within Venom. The Master Poisoner talent makes it so Envenom doesn't remove deadly poison stacks, which is really important because that deadly poison is very powerful. The other talent specializations can use Envenom, but just when they use it, it rips off deadly poison stacks from the target and is not very good. And then the last thing, I have to shill for the fleet-footed talent, the move speed talent. I love having move speed, especially on melee characters in raids. I view move speed as a damage dealing stat. And when you can get more move speed than other people, you can spend less time moving between enemies, more time damaging enemies. And one of the best ways to deal more damage is to simply spend more time dealing damage. So Assassination, getting access to that fleet-footed that the other specs do not get, is a pretty, I view it as a pretty significant increase for Assassination.
Very good. Well, I'll have to bring this up with Kevin next time we talk to him and ask him how much he'd had to drink when he came up with Hunger for Blood, for sure. But look, just a real quick tangent there. You raise a great point that had me nodding along, Simon. Talking about just movement speed and classes that do get access to some kind of ability or buff to their movement speed in general, whether it be popping an ability for a short-term burst or something akin to the Paladin with the more long-term 15% movement speed that you get in the red tree. Look, mate, I've recently re-rolled to Paladin 6 months ago, as Subtle and Mike know, and nobody talks about it, but Pursuit of Justice, or Pursuit for Justice, whatever it's called, with the 15% move speed, it is life-changing. It's completely affected like my positive outlook on not only the game but the class and everything. Like, you think 15%, like, how much could it really be? It adds up. It's a lot. And I'm running down people in PvP and adoring it. And I'm running out of range of spells and going, suck shit. It's fucking amazing. I mean, just anyone on that one jump in. I really can't say enough good things about the classes that get access to these things. As a rogue, guys, as well, like, how does movement speed, you raid more than me, how does this affect your quality of life? I'll throw it open to the floor.
Oh, movement speed's absolutely amazing. Exactly, like I'll completely agree with Simon. I says the quicker you get to the boss, the more damage you can deal. People, it's such a hard thing to equate with how much damage it actually deals. so where people can't like directly like they can't do like the direct math of how much just being quicker is, so they kind of just turn off the blinders, like who needs extra movement speed? I'm just going to take the thing that directly gives me more damage. But just, and especially with Wrath, there are so many fights that require movement, going to hit certain ads, moving away from boss mechanics, to just being able to just move faster, get out of the way, get back into your spot to be hitting the boss. It's amazing. You can't quantify it.
Very good.
Or it's very hard to quantify, or at least anyway.
I'm going to make a prediction here, go out on a little bit of a limb. I'm going to think that there's going to be fights in Wrath where a combat rogue who lacks this movement speed talent is going to sacrifice their Flask of Endless Rage to be able to use the old Swiftness of Zanza 20% move speed bonus and then go with a regular battle elixir. So a little bit less offensive power, but worth it to get that 20% move speed buff. If you're moving back and forth all the time, there's no question that, an extra, fraction of a second every time you're moving between targets is going to add up quick. And I bet is going to add up more than the difference between the flask and the battle elixir.
There you go. Subtle, anything on this before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, movement speed's an incredible stat, especially for PvP. I mean, a lot of people are going to be going to engineering too. You get the rocket boots, and that's just an insane DPS cooldown. People don't necessarily think of it as a DPS cooldown, but I mean, anytime you're out of range, if that's going to get you in range to attack again quicker, that's just more damage you're doing. So on top of just being a great utility thing for just not dying, then, I mean, it also is a straight DPS increase on a lot of fights.
All right. Subtle, I'll keep you going. I'll put you on the spot and throw the next listener question to you before we get to the next talent tree. This one comes from Chingla in Twitch chat, who says this. Question: will the rogue rotation have enough nuances such that there is a notable difference between the top rogues and the average rogue? Or will it be incredibly simple, like a 1 to 2 button spam, where the difference in DPS comes down to gear and RNG?
Yeah, there's always enough nuance with like timing, like procs with some of your CDs, like Killing Spree, things like that. And I mean, there, like, at least early on when you're playing Assassination, like there's enough things to keep track of, like your Envenom buff uptime. Like when you Envenom, it increases like your chance to apply poisons for a little bit, and you don't want to like Envenom again too early and like waste part of that buff. So there's a whole like balance to like keeping your rupture up, keeping your Envenom buff up, but not envenoming too quickly and wasting some of that buff time. And then, keeping a hunger for blood up too. You gotta pay attention to that. But yeah, I think there's enough that like really good rogues are gonna be separated from good rogues for sure.
Very good. Any of you, your other two guys, anything to say on that question there, or anything that Subtle said?
I would just absolutely agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say I absolutely agree that Envenom buff uptime will definitely be the difference between like a good assassination rogue versus like a bad assassination rogue. And also knowing and just also keeping up the overkill buff for as long as you can as well. Sort of just like using like refreshing that with Vanish in your opener will also be a really important thing, because that's 30% additional energy. That you can roll for 40 seconds into the opening of a fight.
Very good. Simonize, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, sure. So my opinion of this is that the Assassination is definitely going to be the easier spec to play well, because you're juggling less things. You've got your Hunger for Blood buff, but you're doing that, once per minute. That's not too much. And you're watching this Envenom buff. And beyond that, you're not doing too much each second to each second. You're making sure you don't Envenom, like overwrite the previous one. The combat, on the other hand, you're juggling your Slice and Dice buff, your Rupture debuff. Sometimes you're juggling Expose Armor on top of that. And the big difference, I think, here is that combat, it has much greater swings in its energy generation, because you have your combat potency talent that's 20% chance every time your offhand hits to generate 15 energy. That's a much less consistent source of energy than focused attacks. That's giving you 2 energy every time you crit, which is basically every other attack. So the combat rogue has to deal with and has to be able to, how do I say this? Has to be able to work around, sometimes getting droughts of energy where you get a little unlucky, you don't get combat potency procs. And then you also have to know what to do when you get like a bunch of procs right in a row. How do you handle that? How do you adapt your slice and dice, rupture, and eviscerate usage to best utilize the random effects that are happening right now?
Very good, very good. Guys, we'll come back to more listener questions soon. Everyone in Twitch chat, please, I do see your questions. Keep sending them through. They will get asked at some point. I'm just weaving them in with the stuff that I had pre-prepared. So guys, let's throw it over. Well, actually, let me ask this one question of my own before we get into combat and subtlety. And Mike, I'll direct this question at you. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because along the lines of that question referring to, simplicity of rotations and whatnot, I think we've had discussions in the past, Mike, where you've said something along the lines of, oh my God, if you want the snooze fest gameplay, go with I think it's the mutilate rogue in Wrath. Is that right?
Yeah, the rotation for assassination is a lot simpler. If you're new to rogue, like if this is the first time you're playing rogue in classic, I definitely recommend assassination. The main reason why it's so much easier is exactly what Simon says. You're not worrying about keeping up all these buffs because you just put up a slice and dice once, and then you're just hitting in venom. Because it's just automatically putting back up a 5 combo point slice and dice. So you're just hitting mutilate to 4 or 5 combo points and then hitting in venom and making sure you don't lose that
Gotcha.
that buff up top.
Gotcha. All right, guys, let's get into we'll go to subtlety and we'll finish out with combat last. So same question, different answers maybe. I'll throw it open to the crowd. First in, best dressed. Tell me what Kevin did right and what Kevin did wrong with the subtlety tree in Wrath. How would you review and rate this one?
10 out of 10. Shadowdance is like the funnest ability I think rogues have ever had. Honor Among Thieves is great too. Every time you or somebody in your group crits, you get a combo point. There is I think a 1 second ICD on that, but there was a point, I think it didn't have an ICD early in Wrath, and you just got infinite combo points. Your entire rotation was just eviscerate. It was super crazy.
May I interject?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So it was in fact bugged at one point where the number of combo points it gave you was equal to the number of rogues in your party that had the Honor Among Thieves talent. So you'd set up a party with 5 rogues who all had Honor Among Thieves. You'd start off, you'd hit 1 hemorrhage each. Someone would crit. Then everyone has 5 combo points. Then everyone does a 5-point eviscerate. At least one of those crits. And then everyone has 5 combo points. And you're actually just mashing eviscerate. Every global is ridiculous and very bugged and got very much fixed to not do that anymore.
I hear you laughing, Mike.
Yes, that was what I was going to say, but Simon got to it first. So, and I actually even remember that meta of literally just going into 5s with 5 rogues and just completely destroying everyone because of that bug.
Very good.
Yeah,
Sorry, Subtle, back to you,
I
man.
couldn't remember the specifics on that, but yeah, it was insane. I just remember everybody was just spamming eviscerate like crazy. But yeah, so Shadowdance is awesome. Honor Among Thieves, awesome. Yeah, so Subtlety just gets all these crazy buffs, and Shadowdance on its own is just so good, and it's fun because it opens up all these possibilities, like sapping people without actually going into stealth, and it opens up so many different PvP plays.
I must admit, I am seeing Shadowdance for the first time now, and Mike knows that I have had some colorful words to say about rogues in the past. I am not a fan of rogues. And I see that talent, and I'm not going to lie, it makes me angry and shit my pants all at the same time. I fucking hate you guys with a passion. Shadow Step was bad enough, and now Shadowdance comes along, and I'm I relish killing rogues in PvP. But now having to deal with this, I'm like, you fucking pricks. Tell me, I'll throw it to you other guys, Simon and Mike. 10 out of 10s all round from Subtle there, and absolutely not a negative in the subtlety tree. Do you guys agree or disagree? How would you personally review this tree? First in, best dressed, guys.
Sure,
I would definitely go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I knew that would happen. I set you up
I'm
for
sorry.
it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Simon. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. I've seen, ridiculous Shadowdance combos of, opening up on people with just like back-to-back ambushes, and you're backed up with, being able to refresh cheap shot whenever you want to, do your kidney shots. The ambush does so much damage. It's ridiculous. It does too much, dare I say, too much damage. And with that talent right above Shadowdance, Slaughter from Shadows, you're reducing the energy cost of your ambush from 60 down to 40, which makes it much, much more able to just throw these back-to-back-to-back ambushes during your Shadowdance. Because the Shadowdance only lasts so long. You're only going to have so much energy available there. But, you're still going to cast 3, 4, maybe 4 ambushes plus your crowd control abilities like a kidney shot or whatever, and just dumpster people. Oh man, all I could say is I wish it was stronger. This whole tree was a bit stronger in a raiding environment, but then maybe that's asking for a little bit too much. I just really want to be able to raid with cheat death so I can stand in boss mechanics that would kill me instead of having to do them. I wish I could, be competitive and have cheat death in a raid.
Hey,
All
play
right.
Prop Alley if you want cheat death in a raid.
Fuck Ardent Defender. Fucking Prop Pally's overpowered. Fuck Ardent Defender. Josh has a vendetta with fucking rogues. I have a vendetta with fucking prop paladins.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Yes. All right, Mike, bring us on home. Look, are we truly, as Kevin just pulled off a flawless victory with Subtlety?
Yeah, I think Subtlety is amazing, and I have some experience with PvPing as a rogue and Wrath, just definitely not as much as Subtle. But Shadowdance, the skill cap for playing a rogue was already high. It gets even higher with Shadowdance. The amount we were already the masters of control, and now we become the gods of control.
I was going to say though, Mike,
with
to pull you off on a tangent on it. Like I know this is a silly thing to say. You guys are all great players, but I stare at that as a fucking average player, and I'm like, scratching my head, going, when do I prioritize this thing? How do I weave this in? Like I feel like this will really separate, the use of this talent will really separate the good PvPers from the fucking idiots who don't know what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. The skill cap of a Subtlety rogue in arenas is going to be absolutely extreme with Shadowdance. We're going to see there's going to be some crazy clips and plays in Wrath Classic of rogues with Shadowdance, and I will be there for every second of the entertainment.
That'll be the climax
Shadowdance rogue
moment.
is the most fun I've had in PvP on any class. It just makes the game so fun. And one little nuance that also adds a bit of skill to it is when you're using Shadowdance, you're outside of stealth, but you can use stealth abilities. So when you use Shadowdance, it changes your bar, and you have to set up a bar that makes sense to both be using stealth abilities and out of stealth abilities, which isn't something rogues have had to deal with before. So the way you set up your Shadowdance bar is actually a big part of being good at playing Shadowdance, having a bar that actually makes sense and is going to allow you to do all the things you want to do.
Well, just to finish up on this, Simonize, if I can throw it to you, I'm a little bit confused because, obviously I might have framed the question wrong earlier, but like I said, I feel like the overwhelming feedback on rogues is TBC is when you are gods. And people, yeah, rogues are amazing in Wrath, don't get me wrong, but I feel like people don't gush over the Wrath PvP rogue in the same vein that they do the TBC PvP rogue. But we're sitting here just absolutely losing our minds over Shadowdance. And so I'm sitting here scratching my head going, well, hang on, why aren't PvP rogues considered the god mode?
I'd imagine that has more to do with other classes getting buffed and being more competitive
right.
than it does with the rogue individually. Comparatively, you're probably not as strong. I mean, you never have Warglaves of Azzinoth in Wrath to just an insanely powerful weapon that's perfectly itemized for your rogue to just dumpster everyone you come across. So maybe that's a little bit of it, and I think mainly the other classes being buffed as well to be kind of brought up at least closer to the level of rogue.
Yeah, very good. No, well said, mate. Mike, we'll throw in a listener question. I'll direct this one to you. This is Ryan again asking the following. This might have been attached to his last question, but I think they might be separate. Mike, why should I invest in a rogue's armor penetration gear in Ulduar when I can just invest in a warrior?
That is a very good question. And I would have to say that a rogue, specifically compared to a warrior, we have more abilities to actually just straight up survive than a warrior. A lot of people even a lot of like rogue mains forget with Wrath a lot more. There's a lot more raid wide damage from a lot of encounters in Wrath, and for some reason, rank 8 Feint gives you an ability that says you take 50% less damage from all AoE damage. We also just have it just insane cooldowns for just speed clearing through trash, stacking Blade Fury and Killing Spree and Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush gets put down to 3 minutes. Killing Spree and Blade Fury are both at 2-minute cooldowns. With Phantom Knives, the Plague Field for just cleaving through trash compared to Warrior gets completely leveled, and we are able to just stay with the best of them for AoE in Wrath. Not to mention that we have that rogues scale with gear just as well as warriors, but we start off, but we're even stronger than they are in even in the first two tiers of the raids, just because the way our class works. We're just going to do more damage than warriors at the beginning of the expansion.
Very good. You other two guys, anything that Mike hasn't mentioned or anything you want to emphasize there on why give gear to a rogue instead of a warrior?
Just on the topic of like the feint, it allows you to like just ignore certain mechanics, which is insane. Like things that like a warrior might have to get out of melee range for, a rogue can just sit there, pop feint, take half damage, and be totally fine. So that's obviously going to be a huge DPS increase for situations where it allows you to not have to go out of melee range. And yeah, I'm not super keyed in on like how warriors perform versus rogues in like Ulduar tier, but I know later on rogues can definitely outperform warriors, but warriors are still like way up there.
Yeah, like what Mike said, the rogues have so many abilities to just take less damage while you're cleaving through a dungeon's trash. And you can see it in logs of TBC raids as well. I mean, you see in TBC, you see the warriors doing more damage, but also taking considerably more damage than a rogue does throughout a raid. And in Wrath, we have the damage at the very least equalized, if not in favor of the rogue in the earlier stages, and the rogue still has the advantage of taking considerably less damage. So when you stack up warriors in a raid to try to cleave down raids, you have to bring more healing. You have to have more healing throughput to keep them alive. It costs the raid more compared to a class like Rogue that has all these good defensive abilities and the capability to just take less damage.
Very good. Guys, let's move on to the combat tree. We'll come back to those final couple of listener questions sitting there in the chat after this one. Guys, I will again open this one up to the floor. Yell out if you feel confident in answering this, but you know the drill by now. Kevin is sitting there all, wide-eyed in front of you, waiting for your either praise or wrath in regards to the combat tree. Review him. How did he do? Pros and cons of the combat tree. His job's on the line, guys.
Killing Spree's dope. I'll say that. It can get you in trouble though. You gotta watch out for it on a few things. I can't remember the boss's name, but in Ulduar, after you finish like the XT area, there's that guy, you kill him, he becomes a bridge. Can't remember his name, but
Kolagharn.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a time when if you killing spreed them, you would just like fall off a cliff and die. So there's weird things like that you have to watch out for. But overall, killing spree is awesome. Stack it with blade flurry, you do just insane damage, and you can also you're like immune to CC obviously when you use it, so you can like time it with certain CCs to like just immune them. So that's also pretty awesome use.
Very good. The one thing I'll say before you other two get in, I have very, very, very few memories from WoW back in the day. Simonize, if you weren't aware, if you've just to give you a bit of background on me, I was a rogue from day one, vanilla, TBC, Wrath. I quit at the start of Cataclysm. I'm a weird guy, man. I never had another alt. I literally played this one character the whole freaking time. And actually, my listeners don't know this. I've never added this detail in. I was combat the whole time. I never tried another spec. I was a combat rogue 100% of my experience with WoW 15 years ago. And like I said, I have very few memories of Wrath, but I remember really enjoying hitting that killing spree button. It was a really fun ability to press. And, what do we play these games for if not fun? And you have to make specs and abilities enjoyable and get that dopamine hit into you. And I like using this. It looks cool. It has throughput. It's really, really good. So I personally do commend Kevin on killing spree as well. But, to open it up, Simonize, I'll throw it to your way. Pros and cons, again, be as harsh as you want, or throw as much love towards the tree as you want. Combat, talk to us.
Yeah, I think combat's doing basically the same thing it did in TBC, just better. I mean, the whole shtick of putting out a large amount of damage as combat was stacking up, as much as you could into your blade flurry that was doubling your damage output when you were hitting 2 targets. And now we've got killing spree to do on top of our blade flurry, in addition to our adrenaline rush, in addition to our, potion of speed, in addition to our, whatever trinket activation you've got. And the whole fun of combat is you just completely pop off when you line up that good blade flurry with your adrenaline rush, now with your killing, and you do so much damage. Oh, it's very fun. Your screen is covered in numbers, and I mean, there's plenty of trash pulls. Like even now, when I do it, I'll have double the damage of the next person on the meter for that trash pull where I just slaughtered with my cooldowns. Then the next one, you're a little worse when you don't have all of those, but don't worry, we can have fun every 2 minutes. And killing spree is great. You press it, your character goes kind of dark, like when you use Cloak of Shadows, and you're jumping around the battlefield. You're teleporting every half second. Boom, 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 boom. Dealing damn. Oh, it's great. It's great.
Very good, Mike. Bring us home.
I will have to say, I think killing spree is great. I agree with both of those gents. But I actually like what they did more to the assassination tree than what they did to the combat tree. A lot of the abilities are just generic, like, increase your damage, that's fine. What I really like to me is that they took some of the weapon specializations in the combat and they bunched them together to help you consolidate with making your specs. Like they put fists and daggers together. They put swords and axes. Yes, I wonder how many people forget that rogues can in fact use axes in Wrath of the Lich King.
Right. So basically you're saying combat is like the cheese pizza of talent trees. I mean, it's fine and all, but at the end of the day, it's just a fucking cheese pizza.
Yeah, I would say so. It's really good, and it's exactly what Simon and I said. It's pretty much doing the same thing it was in TBC. Another thing, I really like Savage Combat. It's giving the rogue more utility. So basically what Savage Combat is, do you know how Arms Warriors basically increase the physical damage of everyone in the raid? Of course I don't.
Who do you think you're talking to?
All right, I don't know. Well, so they basically gave the same debuff that Arms Warriors have in TBC to a rogue to help give a rogue more raid utility now. So you have that choice. Do you want to bring an arms warrior or do you want to bring a combat rogue? Even in tier 7, even though assassination is good, you have a reason to bring, an assassination rogue and a combat rogue because you have that master poisoner and you have that savage combat for the utility for your raid.
Very good, very good. Maybe we need to, Mike. Maybe we need to introduce a sliding scale of like pizza ratings for talent trees. I think
Oh
we should make this a
God.
thing. Like, what's
Uh,
what's the Hawaiian pizza of the talent trees in Wrath, and what's the pepperoni? Exactly. You know, the face that Simonize made was what I was going for. Is we'll have to think of that another time. Oh dear. All right. Look, guys. We'll finish up on combat there, but I mean, as I alluded to at the top of the episode as well, and you guys mentioned, there is a chance basically that the combat might be something that you veer towards the end of the expansion. Is that right, Mike?
yes, but I will actually also say, because depending on how much they buff like Nax, because we all know that Nax in Retail Wrath is incredibly easy, and in my opinion, personally, we'll have to see in the beta how much they buff it. But if you're like a speedrun guild, or if fights are short enough, I actually think combat may be better than Assassination for just cleaving, just to get through the raid and do more overall damage, just cleave through the trash faster, and just have your cooldowns for each boss fight. If the fights are that short enough, I actually think combat will be very, very competitive in the first tier of raids.
Very good.
Yeah, I
go,
agree with
Simonize.
what Mike said. That I think back in the day, and a lot on private servers, a lot of the competitive meta was just around the boss parsing, and the private servers too had a lot of buffed bosses, higher health, longer fights. My impression is they didn't care so much about the overall damage dealt in a raid. They didn't care about damage dealt to trash. And I think the real strength of combat is that they have better multi-target damage. Those cooldowns are going to be more valuable when you're going from pack to pack to pack, able to press the cooldowns when you're in combat and let that cooldown tick down while you're out of combat, not dealing damage anyways. I think there's no question that Assassination's got higher sustained single target damage, but I think, combat potentially has enough utility to be a perfectly viable, maybe even desirable spec, especially in a speedrunning setting, even early in Wrath of the Lich King.
Very good, very good. Guys, I'll throw in a listener question here. And I'll weave in this one because it might be relatively similar to the question that I had next for you. So we've done the talent trees. Thank you so much. You guys are absolutely smashing it. This one's from movies, and anyone jump in that feels that they're confident with this one. What Wrath mechanics will be cheesed by Vanish / Cloak, etc., etc.?
Professor Putricide on his phase changes. That's the main one I remember. You could vanish, like he throws like a potion on the ground and it stuns like your whole raid. But rogues could just vanish the stun, and you could just DPS him the whole time during his transition when everybody else in your raid is just stunned sitting there. So that's the main one I remember, but there's probably a bunch more.
Any others from memory, guys?
I'm not sure whether or not because we're going back to Naxxramas. I remember in Vanilla Classic you were able to if you timed Vanish perfectly to hit my X in his web spray. I'm not sure whether or not we'll be able to do that in Wrath again, but that's definitely one that I remembered. But I don't remember exactly, just completely ignoring certain mechanics in Wrath with Rogue. You definitely will use that stuff to take way less damage.
Very
But
good.
off the top of my head, I don't really remember a lot.
No,
With just
very
completely
good.
ignoring stuff.
I see Simonize applauding many of your
Killing
points,
Spree,
Mike.
it should be a lot easier too, with the immune from Killing Spree. Even though we have like batching now, that makes like vanishing a little bit harder.
That's true.
Okay. I was going to say, I see Simonize applauding many of your points you're raising, Mike. Mike is a fan of yours, so I'm sure he appreciates it. Anything else that you've got to add to that, Simon?
Yeah, so Vanish is one of the most broken abilities I've ever encountered in World of Warcraft. It gives the rogue some kind of super immunity for just a fraction of a second. And if you know how to time it, you can mitigate just about any boss ability that occurs instantaneously. Like if the boss drops down a pile of slime on the floor and someone's standing and it takes damage, that's not what we're talking about. But anything that's going to deal a large stun to you, you just vanish right as it gets applied. A huge burst of damage like Saffron's Frost Bomb. If you're really confident in your vanish, you don't have to hide behind an ice block. You can just sit there, continue DPSing for an extra couple of seconds, and time that vanish just right. And of course, Cloak of Shadows. I'm not going to have any specifics for you that I can come to mind, but between Cloak and Vanish, you have so much opportunity to just cheese boss mechanics and time your Vanish just right to be immune to any kind of crowd control the boss is doing. There's a lot of potential.
I hate Cloak of Shadows so much. I hate you guys so much. I can complain less as a prot paladin with Bubble these days, but I'm still like, ugh, you bastards. All right, next question. This is a pretty intense one, so listen up, guys, and if you need a moment to answer, I understand. So here we go. Chingla asked the following. With dual specs added in Wrath, will rogues be able to respec into Subtlety and use premeditation along with improved slice and dice while having the tier 6 two-piece bonus equipped during a boss pool countdown and then respec and equip back into Assassination build right before the boss pull? That one kind of blows my brain. Simon's putting his hand up. Please go for it, mate.
So this is something a lot of people were asking and waiting to see if this would work. And now that we have the beta, we've been able to do some testing. Currently, when you change your spec with dual spec, it does not remove your existing personally applied buffs. It maybe should, but doesn't right now. So yes, you can switch to Subtlety, use premeditation, use your slice and dice, then switch back to Assassination. With that tier 6 bonus as well. And this is something that only the Assassination rogues can do, because if you just try to, like if you're combat and you try to do this, you switch from Subtlety to combat and you recast a slice and dice, once you don't have that tier 6 set equipped anymore, it reverts down to its baseline 40% haste instead of the 45. The Assassination rogue is special because they have that cut to the chase talent. When you refresh the duration of slice and dice with cut to the chase, it's not casting a new one. It's just bumping that duration back up. So if you can keep that same slice and dice rolling the entire fight, you're going to be able to benefit from that 5% haste. Now, even if they change dual spec to not keep your buffs, your personally applied buffs, like say you do Subtlety, you do your premeditation, your slice and dice, and then you dual spec over back to your Assassination. If they make that remove your slice and dice, there's still potential to abuse this tier 6 two-piece bonus that increases the haste of your slice and dice by 5%. For those that don't know, this is a very big deal, 5% haste. If you can, say, summon a Dig Rat, which is a weird item out of Barrens that you can attack. You could summon it, cheap shot it, slice and dice, and then move quickly to the boss. You'll drop combat after killing the Dig Rat, move to the boss, cut to the chase to refresh it. Or maybe you have like a Warlock, summon an Infernal, let it go hostile, have something you can attack, build combo points on, slice and dice, then move quickly to the boss, unequipping your slice and dice, your tier 6 between putting up the slice and dice and the boss. So you don't even need the dual spec to work the way it currently does to be able to cheese this tier 6 two-piece bonus right now.
Very, very interesting. Hey, before I ask the follow-up question to that, Subtle, I know you've got to go soon. Are you okay for a few more minutes, or how are we looking?
Yeah, I can keep going.
Beautiful. Look, Simonize, just to keep you going for a quick burst after that, I sort of sit here and I think to myself, all this wild and wacky testing that no doubt is going on the Wrath beta at the moment. I hear a question like that, I hear your answer, and I sort of sit here and wonder, is it basically working as intended? And even if it is working as intended, is it something that kind of should be a thing in a weird way? Is it weirdly OP? And I'd ask you to sort of like tread, I say this tongue in cheek, mate, tread carefully with your answer, because, several members of the Classic team do listen to this podcast. And so people demonize me for asking questions, the things that they don't want nerfed that we talk about on the show. And they're like, Josh, don't put fucking ideas in their head, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, general question, like, do you think it's fine and not a problem? Or is it a little bit of a like, oh, I don't know if we should be able to do that?
I'm going to be crucified too. I think it's kind of obnoxious, and the power level of doing this is high enough that if it's possible, specifically talking about any way to bring the tier 6 two-piece bonus with you into a fight without having to keep the tier 6 equipped. That's what I'm talking about. The power level of doing that is high enough that I think if it's possible, people will do it. But at the same time, it requires kind of obnoxious setup. And this kind of sounds to me like the gnomish battle chicken situation.
I was going to raise
where,
that. Absolutely.
We figured out how to guarantee proc a gnomish battle chicken. So before every boss, people would like pull a trash pack and do all this jujitsu with getting hit and summoning their chicken and whatever. And people were largely just like annoyed by that. So like, I think the problem with it is not so much that it's powerful, but that it's annoying to set up. So like either nerf it, make it not possible, or change it in a way that makes the setup easy so you don't delay the raid to set up this buff.
Gotcha. Subtle, Mike, tell me if you want to weigh in on this at all. What did you think of everything that you just heard?
I think Simon nailed it perfectly, and I absolutely want nothing to do with that. That just sounds just fucking tedious as shit to me, and it's not the reason I play the class. I get rid of that shit. I don't think it's really hard to say for me.
Okay, Subtle.
I mean, Warriors have been doing that like all of TBC with the Solarian gem and the tier 2 bonus for Battle Shout. So that seems like the better analogy to me than the Battle Chicken. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. That seems like it would be pretty annoying doing that before every single boss. But I mean, Warriors have been doing essentially the same thing with old gear. So I don't know. They haven't fixed that one, so I'm not sure if they'll fix this.
Very good. Simon, we've got Rookie of the Year from last week's show, Ryan, saying to you, Rookie of the Year for this week's show, you're doing so well, mate. You can bet if Blizzard doesn't fix this that Kira will remove it on the logs. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I don't know the mind of Kira, I have to say. But what I would guess is that it might be really hard to detect, because I don't think it gives a different spell ID for the Slice and Dice. I don't think. I'm not sure. But it might be a very difficult thing for Warcraft logs to detect whether or not your Slice and Dice is like pre-buffed with tier 6, two-piece bonus. What maybe they could detect is like, did you walk into the fight with Slice and Dice? But, that could disqualify a log that was, just carrying a Slice and Dice from the last fight. And then you wouldn't want that either.
All right, very good. Guys, we're getting on the home stretch now. We're very close to ending. Someone did ask about the professions. It's one of those things that obviously if you jump on YouTube, there's a million profession guides out there right now. Everyone is saying the same thing, JCNG for every bloody class. I know there's a little bit more nuance to it, but, for the most part, we hear this so much. Outside of, more, I'm not going to ask you what should you take as a rogue. I just kind of want to hear you guys freeform jazz. I mean, is anyone going to surprise me? What are you guys taking as professions in Wrath? Simon, I'll start with you.
I ain't taking jewel crafting, that's for sure. I mean, it's very strong, but it's boring and lame.
Nice.
In my humble opinion. I'm going to be setting up with engineering and tailoring if we don't see any substantial changes from what's on the beta right now. So the tailoring that you want is the Sword Guard Embroidery Cloak Enchant that gives you a proc buff that gives you 400 attack power for 15 seconds. It's like a 20% chance to proc, so it's very consistent. Like when it's up, it's going to trigger, and then a 55-second internal cooldown. I think the strength of combat is, in these speedrun situations, trash damage, cooldowns, and having an extra proc of 400 attack power that I know when it's going to come up, essentially, is just going to allow me to, I think I'm going to be able to juice more value out of that proc than a like spreadsheet or gear analysis tool would suggest that assumes, 100% uptime in a fight, whereas like throughout an actual raid, you got uptime, downtime, where, you know, during the downtime, your cooldown on your cloak enchant's ticking down. And then, like, I know it's going to proc, and I can stack all my cooldowns into it. So I'm excited to play with engineering plus tailoring.
All right. Subtle, you made a shocked face when Simon just said he's ditching JC. Mate, talk to me. What about you? What do you have to say about that?
Oh, I mean, I'm not super. He's the guy who knows all the cutting edge stuff. I was really surprised to hear about the tailoring because back in the day, at least, we were always NGJC. But I do have a question for you, though. Like later in the expansion, when we're gemming armor pen, will you be going out of tailoring, or are you thinking of sticking with it the entire time?
I'm thinking of sticking with it the entire time. My best estimates, for the folks in the audience that don't know, my thing for classic TBC and Wrath has been that I've built a spreadsheet, a gear analysis tool for rogues, and I do my best to make it as accurate as I can. And my spreadsheet, you know, with this 100% uptime assumption, shows very little difference between tailoring and jewel crafting, like a small fraction of a percent difference. So that makes me think that, you know, in practice, if I can get even like 5 or 10% more value out of tailoring than the spreadsheet suggests, I'm probably ahead, and it's just more fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you're doing something like people weren't really thinking about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like pretty much everybody's going, you know, NGJC, so it's cool to mix it up like that, especially with like an interesting proc where, you know, you time it with your CDs. It's a little more fun than just having like better gems or extra gem sockets or whatever. But yeah, NG on Rogue, I think like you gotta have that. I mean, rocket boots we talked about before, how strong movement speed is. You got the haste enchant on the gloves. If you're a PvP rogue, you got the mounted rocket cannon, whatever it's called. That's key for like getting kills. You combo that with like your Shadowdance. You use it as like a finisher kind of thing. It can also kill grounding totems, which can be huge for like casters on your team if you're running like RLS or something like that. So yeah, NG is just like probably the most fun profession of like any expansion in Wrath. It just gets so many things. It's hard to not take it.
Yeah, Mike, I'll throw it to you. Are you going to be on Team Cool Kids and join the anti-meta with me and be double gathering? Come on, man.
No. Sadly, Josh, I am more of a min-maxer, but I actually I have to pretty much echo Simon that I actually really enjoy tailoring and just the proc of that extra power. Just lining up all of your cooldowns, especially if you're combat. If you get your berserking procs, your embroidery proc, pop all your cooldowns, get your trinket procs. Lining everything up when you're DPSing is just infinitely more fun to me than just getting these flat stat bonuses. It's just the chef's kiss of DPSing as a rogue.
Very good. Well, fine. I'll leave myself to my own devices. I'll be picking many a flower and having a wonderful time, Mike. You know, I know how to have a good time. Don't worry. All you other guys think you're having fun with your fucking JC and your NG and your tailoring. Please, come on.
Also, not
for sure. You're gonna have a hell of a lot more gold than us. That's for sure.
Yeah. Also, not to mention, I actually think tailoring is going to be easier to level, maybe on like established servers versus the fresh servers, just because of the nature of just like cloth versus jewel versus like the gems. I think jewel crafting's level up is going to be really, really expensive.
Yeah. That's actually the one thing that's, look, I joke, but like North's trying to convince me to drop the double gathering thing and just go with mining and NG. And look, there's a 50-50 chance I'll do it at this point. I really need to try. I've never engineered really seriously before. I need to try it out in the Wrath beta if I eventually get in. If I do fall in love with it in the beta, then yeah, sure, I'll probably give it a go in Wrath. But if for some reason it doesn't happen, like I've got no drama with doing the weird double gathering thing. But I do completely understand what I'm missing out on. But you guys know how I play the game. Look, guys, we'll somewhat wind it up there. I'll just finish off with this. Like, have we not covered anything that you feel is important? Have we left something on the table? Are there any last points you want to say to sell people on the amazing experience that is Rogue in Wrath? Guys, speak now or forever hold your silence.
Tricks of the trade. I think we forgot to really hone in on tricks of the trade is one of the new tools for Rogue. Tricks of the trade is so unbelievably cool. And you like when for me pressing it you press it like every 30 seconds, but being able to just throw it on the tank at the beginning of any boss fight and just immediately start DPSing compared to any other class is awesome. And then after that, just being able to throw on like trading it with another rogue or another DPS and just give them a 15% damage buff for when you glyph it for 10 extra seconds is unbelievable. It's a part of a reason why you bring a rogue to a raid to give that give that main tank that initial threat bump for the damage you're doing, and then just being able to just give this huge DPS increase every 30 seconds to a DPS. Tricks of the Trade is an unbelievable tool for rogues.
Simon, you're nodding wildly. Was Subtle? Sorry, Subtle. Go to you first, man. Go for it.
I was just going to add on to that. So, like in ICC, you get a set bonus that actually makes it not cost energy, but give you energy, which is amazing. So it's like a main Thistletty every time you use it, and obviously the buff itself has incredible benefits. And last week when I talked about Prop Alley, I was talking about doing heroics in like 5 minutes and stuff like that. Like one of the ways you speedrun heroics, when you have a rogue with you, they have those rocket boots. They put tricks of their trade on you. They can just rocket boot, fan and knife spam, and pull a ton of stuff to you as the tank. And that really speeds things up. So good rogues can like really amplify tanks.
Well, Subtle, you talked about
specifically.
You talked about last week on the show, and obviously it raised a few eyebrows when you mentioned you play at a higher level when you tackle these heroics. Now, granted, we might get some different hard mode challenges in Wrath, as was announced the other day after we did that podcast. But you talked about the 5 to 8 minute crazy, insane pull train double boss in crazy heroics that you run. I'm presuming, like you're describing, maybe that a rogue is a big fucking part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I didn't mention at the time is we usually run 4 DPS too. Once you get enough gear, you can have like an Ellie Shaman just spot healing you, but other than that, they're just like DPSing. So that's another way you really speed up heroics is, like I said before, nothing really hits you that hard in there. So once you have a decent amount of gear, you can just run 4 DPS. You don't actually even need like a dedicated healer for heroics. And that's a really key part of running them extremely fast.
I had to laugh. A long-time listener left a comment, Subtle, about what I presume was that moment on the show when you were talking about the 5 to 8 minute heroic runs. And they were like, Josh, you get all these elite players to talk about stuff that the average player simply cannot do. Give more love to the normal player. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Subtle is a WoW robot sent from the future to destroy content. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, my goal is always to like try to, help people who might not be as good at the game, like learn some tricks to, improve their play and like hopefully elevate like all prop values to play at like a higher level. So, I mean, that's my goal at least.
All good, man. I feel you. I know what you mean. Look, Simon, I'll leave you till last, man. You've been nodding along furiously about this tricks of the trade stuff. Hit me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so Tricks of the Trade's amazing ability, 30-second cooldown, 6-second default duration, 10-second if you glyph it. Subtlety rogues actually get Filthy Tricks talent that reduces your cooldown on this down to 20 seconds. So there's not a lot of like great things about Subtlety rogues in PvE, but that's one of them. More frequent use of Tricks of the Trade. This is an amazing ability that has so many different uses and raid utility that a good rogue is going to be able to be such a big influence by using this. Like Subtle said, running ahead with tricks on the tank to pull extra mobs into the group. And also, like, if you're ever fighting something or you have like ads coming in on a boss or you get some extra pull, that might go directly to the healers or casters because the tanks haven't, are busy tank and other stuff. The rogue can throw that Tricks of the Trade on the tank, go over there and pop off on those mobs and not only, deal good damage to them, but help the group so much by helping control the mobs that the group is having to deal with by sending them directly to the tank. And then, when you're not managing threat with Tricks of the Trade, you're giving damage buffs to other classes. And the most recent thing I heard from actually Kira on the Warcraft logs is that they're intending to attribute the bonus damage from Tricks of the Trade, not to the recipient, but to the caster of Tricks of the Trade, the rogue themselves.
That's huge.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this is a big deal because if you attributed the damage of Tricks of the Trade to the recipient, then you'd have this really degenerate parse meta of like having 3 or 4 rogues that just chain Tricks of the Trade, the same person, so they permanently have this 15% damage buff. And 15% is a lot.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't be competitive if you didn't do that.
And then all the bullshit of people paying for it as well and whatnot.
Yup. Whereas if you attribute it to the rogue, it's more about the rogue picking the correct target who will be able to juice the most damage out of that Tricks of the Trade buff. And it's also like it lines up the parsing incentive with what's actually best for the raid as well, because you want the raid's total damage to be the most. So I really hope that Warcraft Logs goes through with this, attributing the Tricks of the Trade damage to the caster of Tricks of the Trade, so we don't have any of this awful degeneracy.
I really, really like that. And whether you other guys want to say anything about that, let me just say this first. Look, I'm a Final Fantasy 14 player as well, Simon, and I don't play as much now as I used to, but there was a really big argument in that community about, obviously the notion of, actual DPS in a raid versus what they called raid DPS. And this is along those same lines of actually when you use an ability that buffs another class and gives them extra damage, attributing it to the original party that casted that ability. I'm a big proponent of that. I completely agree with you. I think that it should absolutely factor in to the person that, gave the buff to the other party in a tactical situation, knowing what they know, staring at DPS meters, going, well, I'm not going to be stupid enough to give it to the guy who's fucking coming last on the meters. I'm going to give it to this guy. I really, really like that Warcraft Logs is doing that. And I think that it definitely solves a bit of toxicity problems as well. So that's fantastic to hear. You other guys, anything on that before we finish up?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm actually very happy about that they're doing that. It just incentivizes team play and what being part of a raid really is, and not just the parse meta of oh, I didn't get Tricks of the Trade, I'm not gonna be the top parser, because otherwise Tricks of the Trade will probably be the number one buff for someone's excuse for oh yep, I'll never be able to parse as much as this guy, I don't get Tricks of the Trade in my raid.
Yep. Subtle, I can only imagine the bullshit the classic community would get up to if this weren't that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a no-brainer approach to it, I think. You got to factor in hysteria also. If somebody's getting spam tots, they're probably also getting spam hysteria as well. So that's just going to further amplify it. I assume they would treat hysteria in the same way they would treat tot. And I think that's a great move.
Absolutely. Otherwise, we'd be living in a reality where S-Fan would be demanding Tricks of the Trade every fucking second of the raid. Anyway, now that we can say we finished up the podcast, guys, thank you so much. You have been absolutely amazing. Let me sort of go through everyone individually. Mike, as always, we've loved you on the show for years. We know that you love your rogues. You're so passionate. You were fucking fantastic today, mate. Shout out whoever you want to shout out. Go for it.
As of course, shout out to you, Josh, for your lovely, amazing podcast. I haven't been on in a while, but it's always a pleasure to be here. Shout out to Simonize. I'm so glad he was able to come on at the last minute. The amount of knowledge you bring to the Rogue community and just to the WoW community overall to educate people on this class is unbelievable, and props to you.
Absolutely. Here, mate. Subtle, mate, pulling double duty. I can't thank you enough. Putting your hand up for a class that you haven't played for a while, but you were fantastic today, mate. I love talking to you. You're always welcome on the show. Please, plug what you got to plug. We're about to raid you, I think, on Twitch soon. So everyone, please check out Subtle on Twitch as well. But, mate, say your piece.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. This was kind of a last-minute thing, but I'm definitely looking forward to playing Rogue again in Wrath. I kind of took a break from it in TBC, but with Shadowdance coming back, I gotta get some Rogue Arena in. It's too good, man. But yeah, it was awesome having Simonize on here too. I love his videos. Anytime I need to brush up on something for my Rogue, I always check him out. He's the best in the business. So yeah, anybody who's planning on playing a Rogue, either main or alt, definitely check out Simonize. And Fanbo from Blizzard is watching, want to give me a little beta invite, that'd be awesome. and and anybody else in this call who doesn't have one. And,
no, you take it before
yeah.
me, mate. I don't. I'm useless with that shit. You should be getting.
I
in
mean,
there.
man, you had Brian Birmingham on.
Oh
Can't you
yeah,
hook
but
me up?
I'm beta is not for me. Trust me. I don't like. I'm not a tester. I'm not that great with it. It's all. I just get on there and kill other streamers. I'm a fucking loser. Like it's fun. Yeah.
Oh,
Get
man.
Simonize on the beta. This man is the math god, the tester. We need him to test everything. Get Simonize on the beta, Blizzard.
I ain't there yet, and would be very happy if I woke up tomorrow and had a beta invite here.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, if I get in, I will. I have been known in the past to pull some strings to get some people in. So we'll see what we can do, guys. Obviously, I'm very thankful to my guests, and we'll do what I can. But yeah, Subtle, mention the YouTube and the Twitch channel again.
Yeah, sure. SubtleFW on Twitch and YouTube. Right now, I'm mostly making TBC prop pally content, trying to tank bosses with less tanks than they were designed for, doing some cool solo farms, things like that. In Wrath, I'm planning on playing some Blood DK, some Prot Warrior, Fury Warrior, dual spec, and definitely some Subtlety Rogue. Possibly going to get into the PvE Rogue too, but for sure some Subtlety Rogue if you want to check out some Shadowdance PvP.
Very good. And yes, as Buddha Man correctly suggests in Twitch chat, it's definitely me trying to kill other streamers, but winding up getting killed by other streamers. I can assure you of that. But it's all about a bit of fun. Look, Simonize, we'll finish with you, mate. Look, I kind of want to apologize in a weird way. Number one, thank you for jumping on the show at the last second, but I feel so bad that I always brag on the show about, I watch so much WoW Classic content. I fucking know all the YouTube channels, all the streamers from the big guy to the little guy. I'm all over it. I do all this research for the show. And like I said, I feel so horrible that I only came across your channel last week. I'm glad, obviously, better late than never. But I really enjoyed it, and I really have to echo everything that the guys have said. This isn't just lip service. You are clearly well versed with the game, and you break it down at a level that I enjoy. And my big thing has always been, I don't necessarily like bubblegum content. I like hearing stuff I can't hear in other places, and you certainly do that. And I tip my hat to you, sir, and say thank you so much for what you do. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you today and getting to know you. I feel bad. I don't even know if you knew about the show or if you knew anything about what we do here, but you jumped in blind regardless, and you were phenomenal today, mate. Plug whatever you want to plug. Shout out whoever you want to shout out. Thank you so much.
Well, Josh, first I want to say thank you for inviting me onto the show. I've watched Countdown to Classic before. I knew, roughly what this was about. So when you invited me, I was very happy. I mean, I had just gone outside for a run, and then I was in the shower, and then I got out, and I was like, oh, geez, I'm showing up late to this, but I'm happy to be able to make it. And thank you, all three of you, for the immense praise you're giving me. I'm just a guy that likes this game and spends too much time on it, You
came highly recommended, mate. You've clearly got a lot of love in the community.
Well, as you said, Josh, you only recently found my content. You inviting me on here is very helpful because, you have a much broader audience than I do. So maybe more people, more rogue enthusiasts will be able to find my content now. So I thank you for that opportunity. If you want to find me on YouTube, that's youtube.com/c/Simonize show. And it's the same handle on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Simonize show.
Very well said, mate. Everyone, SIMONIZESHOW. The links will be in the show notes. Please go check out Simonize. Please go check out Subtle. Please jump in the Countdown Discord and tell Mike exactly what you think of him, this Sassmeister from Long Island. We love you all, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and we shall talk to you later. Hang around, guys. I'll end the recording there. All right, so we're still live on Twitch. Guys, look, honestly, thank you so much. Subtle, do you want to go get your raids, your stream set up, sorry?
Yeah, I better go do that. They're working on the Nagentis trash right now.
Yeah, too easy, mate. Get stuck in. As soon as you're live, I'll throw you this raid. So I'll talk to you later, man.
Yeah. It was worth it though, dude. You're dope. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
say it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, Simon. I've been watching your content from the start. I've been a rogue main, and the amount of stuff you've educated me like with the class, just to be able to what is it, separate myself from other rogue players has been
There you go.
immeasurable.
There you go.
Yeah, Simon, I was going to say, mate, look, honestly, I feel bad that it was so last minute. I was like, oh my God, this rogue god, and I didn't do my research in the week leading up to this call. I've been so fucking busy. And I was like, oh, there's no way he's going to get back to me half an hour before the show. I was so stoked to see that you got the message and obviously were open to just to doing this in the first place, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. You don't have beta right now, right?
I do not have beta access right now,
Okay.
but a number of people that I work with closely, in the Rogue community have beta access. So I've been able to work with them. Shout out to Wherefore, shout out to Ram, shout out to, oh gosh, I'm going to be sad because I don't remember all the names of the testers. Wherefore has done a lot of work setting up a GitHub for the Rogues to collect all of the different testing results that we have. Rockman actually has provided me some very good testing results as well. So, I've maintained a whole list of like things we need to test. And then even though I'm not the one in the beta doing it, we're getting results. We're collecting information.
Yeah. Well, mate, not to promise anything and not to get your hopes up or anything like that, but certainly in the TBC beta, I was lucky enough to, I do, I'm not trying to sound like a fucking wanker here, but like I do have access to the classic team a little bit. And I did get some people that I thought would be good testers in on the TBC beta. I just forwarded on some names, and like I said, the guys know that I'm not a great beta guy, but I know people that are very good at testing through the community and everything. So I'm more than happy. We'll give it a bit of time, see if you get in over the next week or so. If for some reason you're not in later on, I'm more than happy to forge your name on and we'll talk. And don't let me forget. I'll try and grab your BattleNet details or something, and I'll send on a few names to the classic team and say, look, you probably should go ahead and get these guys in there. So that's the least I can do for you. So we'll do what we can. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely, that sounds wonderful.
Too easy. All right, guys, look, everyone in Twitch chat, we're going to go raid Subtle right now. He is the fucking expert prot paladin. He will be doing some killer content. Let's go support him and say hello. Thank you to all you rogues for watching this show. Thank you guys for supporting the podcast. There's a lot of you in here today. Thank you so much. All right, Simon, Balls, I'll catch you guys later. And Simon, don't be a stranger, mate. If there's anything else, I'll hit you up. If there's anything else Wrath related you want to talk about, you're always welcome on the show, mate.
Absolutely. My DMs are open. If you ever, want to have me back, send me an invite. Let me know. I will do my best to make it happen. I'm happy to be here. Had a good time. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, Mike.
Take it easy.